Good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for a very important community conversation regarding the Citizens Police Complaint Office. I am honored and pleased to host tonight. I am Dr. David Hampton, Deputy Mayor of Neighborhood Engagement, representing the Mayor's Office tonight. We have an august body of panelists joining us as well. Councilor Leroy Robinson, who is the Chair of the Public Safety Committee. Also, Hope Tribble, who is the Director of the Office of Audit and Performance. Dwayne Ingram, President of the Citizens Police Complaint Board. And Kendall Adams, Deputy Chief of IMPD. We're here tonight because in 2018, Mayor Hogsett asked me to conduct a review of the Citizens Police Complaint Office. It is one of the offices under which I supervise and manage. And that office was previously located within IMPD. And in 2017, we moved the office under the mayor's office. And so for now 3 years, the CPCO has reported to the mayor. And so the first thing I did at the mayor's request was approach the Office of Audit and Performance. Hope runs a great team there, and they conducted a review which examined the processes from the perspectives of efficiency. We also looked at accountability and transparency. OAP completed an initial assessment which was more expansive, covering accountability at the end of October 2020. And then the current review consists of internal and external surveys, which we also completed, as well as an analysis of complaint data. We researched national best practices in police oversight. I know many of you in the community have asked about transparency, police oversight, police reforms. This is the mayor's promise on that. And upon completion of the report, it will really be utilized to help us to shape potential changes within the office. So there were 3 approaches to this review. Tonight is, of course, one of those approaches, which is a community conversation. We began with an internal review and a survey, which was made public, which many of you participated in as well. And tonight, the review will culminate in a community conversation because, of course, we could not complete any review without you, the public, and we really need your input. We would like to hear some of your ideas so that they can be included in whatever we conclude at the close of this review process. So thank you all for being with us. I do want to ask Hope and Councilor Robinson, Dwayne and Kendall, if you just briefly introduce yourselves in that order, and then we will begin with our review. After we'll begin with our presentations, after which we would like to open it up for Q&A for a little bit, around about an hour or so. We'll have a rich discussion tonight. So Hope, if you could begin with your introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Hope Tribble. I am the Director of the Office of Audit and Performance. And as Dr. Hampton mentioned, we have performed the 2 reviews on the Citizens Police Complaint Office, and I'm here to share some of the information that we found as well as recommendations of our latest report on the police oversight process.
Thank you, Hope. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hampton. I'm Leroy Robinson, representing District 1 here in Indianapolis on the northwest side of Indianapolis, including Pike and Washington Township. I'm also the Chair of Public Safety and Criminal Justice for Marion County Council. Thank you for being here. And me and our team on the council was instrumental in helping to make these changes for 2020 and beyond. So thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, everyone else.
My name is Dwayne Ingram, and I'm honored to serve as the president for the Citizens Police Complaint Board. And thank you, Deputy Mayor Hampton and Hope and Chief Adams and absolutely Chairman Robinson for your leadership and for getting us to this point. And I look forward to continuing the conversation as we look to work together to improve oversight here in Indianapolis.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kendall Adams, and I am Deputy Chief over our Oversight, Audit, and Performance Division. I represent or stand in place of Chief Taylor, who is Chief of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police. Pleased to join this esteemed panel in this discussion. The reason that I'm probably here is because I work closely with the Citizen Complaint Board and all of the complaints that come through the police department. So pleased to be here.
Thank you all so much. And let me thank the Indianapolis Recorder for hosting this event tonight live on Facebook. And those of you who are now joining in, we're going to begin our presentation to explain the review process, as well as what we plan to accomplish and how we will conclude. And your input will, of course, help us to shape and form the police complaint process as we move forward. Just a final note before I ask Hope Tribble to present to us first. We want to continue to put transparency at the top of our priorities. I know that's important to the mayor, and it's important to me to carry that out in my role as deputy mayor. And I know that Councilor Robinson, Dwayne, and Hope also echo, as well as Kendall, echo those sentiments. And so when issues are brought to our attention, we do all we can to fix and address the issues. So we hope that tonight will be a rich discussion to not only build trust, but that it's about transparency. So at this time, without further ado, Hope Tribble, if you could begin process.
Great. I'm going to share my screen, and just if you all can let me know that you can see it, that would be great. Got it? Okay, great. Deputy Mayor Hampton gave a great overview, and I may repeat some, but I'll try to skip through as necessary, as appropriate. The Office of Audit and Performance performed a review of this Citizens Police Complaint Office and the Citizens Police Complaint Board to review the police oversight model. And that police complaint review process looked at 4 major areas: the model, the police oversight model and the components of it, community engagement, transparency, and accountability. As Dr. Hampton mentioned, we did this through several methods. We had a digital community survey that was administered in 6 languages. We had more than 1,300 responses to that to get insight as well as perspective from the community. We held stakeholder interviews, did phone surveys of prior complainants, and we analyzed data both from the CPCO and the IMPD complaint monitoring and management systems. We looked at other municipalities, similarly situated municipalities, to see how they operated their police complaint and police oversight models. And last but not least, we referred to the National Association for Civilian Oversight and Law Enforcement, also known as NACOLE, which provides standards relating to police oversight. The first thing that we looked at is the types of oversight models. And I want to just briefly identify that there are 3 major general categories of oversight models. There's a review board model, which is just like it sounds. It's a model that has a board that reviews cases of misconduct that have been investigated within the police department. There's the auditor monitor model, which is responsible for writing policy recommendations to the police department based on trends in misconduct. And there's an investigative model that would actually investigate cases of misconduct independently of the police department. Many cities use a hybrid model that includes components of one or more of these models outlined here. What we found in our initial review is that the Indianapolis police oversight model is currently operating as a review board model. And in that model, a person who feels they've seen or experienced police misconduct report that to the Citizens Police Complaint Office, which forwards that information after creating a case to IMPD, and IMPD performs an investigation of the case. That investigation is reviewed by the Citizens Police Complaint Board, and the board sends a report of agreement or dissent to the investigation to the IMPD police chief, and the police chief ultimately makes the decision about discipline or not in the cases. That is the way that the model currently operates. That model was changed this past summer with the passage of Proposal 197 by the City County Council, which added an investigator as staff in the office. So the Indianapolis model has evolved from a review board to a hybrid model. And Councilor Robinson is going to talk more about Proposal 197. So if I go back to those four areas, transparency and accountability is one, and going to go through now what we found in terms of observations or areas for improvement within each of those categories. First, we found that public-facing dashboards and or reports that include performance indicators are best practices and are a great way to expand transparency about the police oversight model to the community. Standard operating and procedures are also important for any organization and help to increase the accountability of the oversight model. And then we also found that reporting the disciplinary action that has been taken in cases increases transparency. With regard to community engagement, our findings indicate that dedicated community engagement staff is a best practice that leads to a better informed, educated, and engaged community with regard to the oversight process. And secondly, many municipalities, or most municipalities, are now including mediation as an alternative resolution to some police complaints, and that in many cases that leads to faster turnaround and improved satisfaction. With regard to the model that is used, a tiered hybrid model allows for the use of proper combination in the oversight components based on the severity or the level of misconduct that is alleged or found. The ability to make recommendations about policy allows the police oversight board to be more proactive, and it also allows for better community officer interactions. Currently, all complaints complaints can be submitted either to the Citizens Police Complaint Office or directly to IMPD. So there are actually two streams of management of those complaints. So that's one of the other findings that we had. And then finally, there are some administrative positions that would be useful to absorb some of the duties that are related to the adjustments that are recommended in this model. With regard to recommendations around accountability, the first is that standard operating procedures be updated or actually implemented for both the board and the office. Secondly, we are recommending that the CPCO and the CPCB actually undergo an annual audit that's independent of the oversight body to ensure that the standard operating procedures are being followed and to increase accountability for the office and the board. And then third, with the change in the model as recommended, we also recommend that the qualifications and responsibilities of the executive director be adjusted as necessary to ensure that the proper qualifications and responsibilities are there for managing the office. With regard to transparency, we have some recommendations for strengthening the data and creating improvements and expanding the public-facing dashboard so that the community has a resource for knowing what is happening within the oversight process. Secondly, actually reporting the actual disciplinary action that is taken in cases where that are sustained by the board closes the loop for transparency, and it also allows the community to understand the full outcome of misconduct cases. And then finally, adopting performance indicators and publishing this data on the dashboard allows the community to hold the board accountable and allows the board and the office to show progress toward meeting goals. With regard to police complaint review and community engagement, one of the things that we are recommending is rebranding. Right now, the office is called the Citizens Police Complaint Office. We think that adding or changing the name to something that one reflects the expanded duties of that would reflect the expanded duties of the office, that will put forth, establish, reflect a renewed commitment to greater accountability, and that would also invite residents to submit both complaints, not only complaints, but also commendations, so that there's also, this office could also be looked at as an opportunity for citizens to note and when they're having positive or exceptional interaction with police officers. We also think that mediation added to the toolkit of the police oversight model would be provide for faster resolution of lower level allegations. It would help to balance the caseload in the complaint review process. And it also can improve satisfaction with the outcomes of cases as they go. Finally, adding a community liaison would help to provide for dedicated community interaction, would help to inform, educate, and engage the public about oversight efforts, and provide improved communication with complainants. So those are the findings and the recommendations that we have. Happy to pass this back to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Whenever, I don't know if you're taking questions now or at the end of the process, but I'm available for that.
Thank you, Hope. At this time, we're going to refrain from questions until each panelist has made their presentation. I would ask Councilor Robinson if he would share at this time.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Hope. So I appreciate you for allowing me to be a part of the presentation and community conversation this evening. Thank you to the Indianapolis Recorder. I want to walk through, Deputy Mayor, the process of how we got here to Proposal 197. A lot of folks don't realize how legislation is made, and we're legislators. So I want to walk folks through the process of how we got to Proposal 197. President Osley and I, we have monthly regular meetings in the community with grassroots folks to talk about criminal justice reform, to talk about problem solving, to talk about ways of how we can do better as legislators. About 6 months ago, we convened a meeting on the east side. Shauna Majors from the mayor's office was assisting us in convening a meeting with some grassroots folks on the east side, really throughout the city. So again, 6 months ago, we met at a church. I can't remember the name of the church, honestly. It was during COVID. I remember we all had on masks, but so we met about 6 months ago. Shauna Majors invited some folks out. I think D. Ross was there, Ashley Gervitz, I think Janelle Howard, Lomax LNO, who else? Antonio Patton, John Grice, Shauna's Peacekeepers, a group of people, maybe there have been 15, 20 people in the room. Again, this is one of our regular conversations that the President Olson and I have, talking about criminal justice reform and policing the community. At that meeting, a lot of concerns were brought up from the community folks. They showed a lot of concerns they had about what we do as legislators, about IMPD, about just government in general. One of the things came out of that meeting, though, was discussion about the Citizen Police Complaint Board. This is the first line of defense for those who complain, have issues with IMPD. And part of the discussion was about some things need to take place to change that process. Again, during these meetings that we have a lot of different concerns from folks. This particular meeting, though, this was probably ground zero number one. Because again, this is the first line of defense for those who have concerns and what they can do if they have a concern or an issue with IMPD in some form of abuse from their perspective. So out of that meeting, we had a long discussion, maybe about 2 hours. And in that meeting, certain things came out about the organization, what needs to change, what people need to see. And unfortunately, a few of those things I hadn't even heard of was taking place. So from that meeting, we went back and talked to IMPD, of course, Deputy Chief Adams, Chief Taylor, talked to the mayor's office, talked to President Ingram, talked to board members. We talked to a lot of folks over the next 4 or 5 months. And from those discussions, we even had some, President Ingram, remember, we even had some community conversations, virtual, for folks to give input on the process. So we had public meetings, we had virtual meetings, we had internal meetings. It's about the discussion that came from the community conversation that we had 6 months ago. So from that time, we decided to meet with these different individuals, organizations, about what can we do to make this better. Again, we had maybe 2 virtual meetings. President Ingram, you were there with the executive director, with folks asking for input on Proposal 197. So I drafted the proposal a few months ago, got it through committee, got it through the full council, got a mayor's signature, and here we are today. I said that to say this, that was a very these changes you just saw today that you will see forward was very grassroots from the community driven, that came out of a meeting called by Shauna Majors 4 or 5 months ago. And from that, we created this process to have a new amended Proposal 197. So with that, so it works. It does work. And we're still working on a few other things, which I'll talk about at the conclusion, that we're working on from another meeting we just had maybe a month ago. So with that, Deputy Mayor, I do want to kind of share the 4 things from that meeting that that came out of the discussion. Can you all see that, Deputy Mayor? So I just want to kind of talk about the 4 changes that came out of that meeting that we had several months ago. One thing that has changed is that we've changed the amount of time to file a complaint from 60 days to 180 days. And what we gathered from those discussions at that meeting was that many complaints, I think the majority of complaints that are filed by our citizens came in after the 60-day point. So maybe day 61, maybe day 70, maybe day 80 or 90, because it took more than 60 days for folks to come up with the gall and the bravery to say, you know, I'm gonna file a complaint. So we want to extend that time. And again, those complaints, the far majority were filed after 60 days. So we extended that to 180 days from that research. The second thing we did was that the director of the organization would have to provide monthly reports to citizens of all complaints against officers after the disposition, though. Whether the disposition was in favor or against the officer, those things will be made public. And there was we were doing that, but we weren't doing it in the fashion that we had hoped. There had to be a public information, a FOIA request to get that information. So don't happen anymore. All information will be public on our website, on our portal going forward. So again, you had to file a Freedom of Information Act to get the information about the complaints filed against officers, and that's totally unrealistic. So from now, it's just made public record, and the directorship provide that on a monthly, ongoing basis. Also, what we found out in those discussions was that if a citizen filed a complaint against an officer, the command district, northwest, east, south, the command district would investigate the complaint on an officer. So again, if a complaint was filed, the command district would investigate that complaint. We wanted to remove that because that appeared to be a conflict of interest to our citizens that were filing complaints. And from our board members and those in the community that discussed this topic, they felt that internal affairs was a more appropriate place to start. Again, for some may not be the best place to start though, but it seemed a little bit more transparent to go to internal affairs to do the investigation versus the command office, the command district where the officer was from. So internal affairs will assist an independent investigator, which the officer will now hire. So we moved away from the command district doing the investigation to internal affairs doing the investigation, along with providing an independent investigator hired by the office to do the investigation. So again, trying to provide more areas of transparency to where it wasn't the command district, it was an independent investigator working with internal affairs doing investigation. And then lastly, was probably one of the most important pieces of this is that the individual citizen who filed a complaint during the hearing with the board wasn't allowed to speak to the board members. So the complaint was filed, the individual citizen would go to the board, the case would be heard, but that individual citizen wasn't allowed to share his or her complaint from their own voice, their own emotions to the board. We thought that was egregious and that was unacceptable. So we allow for the officers and our officer and the complaint to have 5 minutes to share with the board their situation that occurred and their involvement with the officer. So those are the 4 things that we changed. We're working on a few more. As we talk to President Ingram and hear from him, we're working on a few more things. I wanted to make it clear with those 4 changes, came about because of community conversation that President Oshie and I had, that we continue to have on a monthly basis with the community. And the last part, Deputy Mayor, is that we had another meeting about a month ago with some folks. Of course, Deputy Chief Adams was there, Chief Taylor was there, President Oshie, Shauna Majors was there, with some community members as well. I think Shane Shepard was in that meeting, where violence interrupters. So again, we talked about how we can work on interrupting violence in our community. So at that meeting, which is about a month ago, we have another proposal coming out with some funding to support these efforts. And I say that, Deputy Mayor, because I want folks to know that we're meeting in the community. Everything isn't always on Facebook or social media. What we do, we're meeting in the community, we're hearing from folks, we're crafting legislation from what we hear, number 1. We're also funding these efforts, number 2. So again, you'll hear more about this violence interrupter piece that we'll be rolling out in the next 30 to 60 days based on a community meeting called by President Oshie and I about a month or 2 ago to fund and give resources to those individuals that are doing these things in our community. So with that, Deputy Mayor, that's my time. I welcome any questions going forward. But I want folks to know that we are engaging the folks in the community on a grassroots level to make changes with legislation when we hear from them and put funding behind those ideas. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Robinson. And I'm glad that the public has an opportunity to get behind the scenes insights, into the work that goes into police reform and taking complaints very seriously, even to the point that you've moved a community conversation in a church toward actual legislation and funding. So thank you so much for that insight. At this time, we'd like to hear from the president of the Citizens Police Complaint Board, and that is Mr. Dwayne Ingram.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm excited and honored to serve in this capacity as the president of the Citizens Police Complaint Board. And I am encouraged by the progress that we have made thus far to move oversight of our police, our IMPD, in the right direction. When this body was created in the early 90s, I believe it was 1990, it was created as an innovative body, as an innovative idea and actually to echo Chairman Robinson's remarks, the office and the board were created out of a season of community unrest and response to violence in our city. So as we are here now looking to continue to progress our model, I'm excited and thrilled that we're continuing to keep community input at the forefront of all of the changes that are impacting this office. This effort that and thank you to Director Tribble for her presentation today. What she presented was a culmination of efforts from her office as a response to the survey that went out a little while ago. However, what this meeting today represents is bringing together several processes and several ideas and several groups of people who are all working together for one mission. And the mission is to continue to improve relations between IMPD and the community and to improve police oversight in our community. So just as by way of a quick update, back in July of 2020, this year, during the pandemic, our board met and we made a ruling that we requested that the mayor do a complete review and overhaul of the Citizens Police Complaint Office. And this survey was already in the works. And I'm excited that the survey plus the efforts led by Councilman Osley, President Osley, and Chairman Robinson have kind of walked alongside the board in our efforts to make sure that we're being transparent with the work that we do and that we're being good stewards of this work that you all have entrusted us with. And we're excited for the 4 recommendations that were approved in the August council meeting that Chairman Robinson already explained in great detail. Those changes were monumental in that this ordinance that created the Citizens Police Complaint Board and the Complaint Office have not been substantially improved since 1990 when it was created. So we were working with a bit of an outdated ordinance, and these things are one piece to help update the work that we do here in Indianapolis. One of the other things that we have requested that we're excited that Director Tribble and her staff will be working with us on is implementing a standard operating procedure for the complaint office, because what we have found is where the ordinance does not speak, confusion and chaos can arise. So this operating procedure that Director Tribble and the city staff will create for the complaint office will do a great deal of work to help us answer questions before they're asked and just to standardize some of the work that the Citizens Police Complaint Office does on a day-to-day basis. I won't go into the details of that Proposal 197 again, but those 4 things were mentioned there. And one other thing that I wanted to mention is the training requirement, because there's been a lot of attention towards the training requirement that we have as board members. We are required to do 20 hours of IMPD police-related trainings. And we are also required to do 16 hours of police ride-along time annually. So as an appointed board member, every year we have to do 20 hours of in-class training with IMPD and 16 hours of ride-along time. This allows us to have to increase our knowledge base so that as we're making decisions on cases that we're here, it allows us to have an unbiased opinion or an opinion based on facts and knowledge and education of IMPD. And we're thankful for the relationship that we have with the chief's office and every training that IMPD, any officer does has been open and available to us. to the point where our training academy for 2020, we have a couple board members who are training academy staff members. They have created custom tailored trainings just for the Citizens Police Complaint Board. And although we're in the pandemic season, we have not been able to do what we have typically done in the past as far as trainings. We have 4 trainings scheduled for the remainder of the year, and we're excited to work with IMPD to get those trainings done. Understanding we're in a pandemic, we might not be able to, because of barriers outside of our control, we may not be able to hit those requirements as in times past. But we're going to get through 2020, and we're going to try to get back to normal here in 2021. And again, I just want to thank Deputy Chief Kendall Adams and Chief Taylor for their support for the Citizens Police Complaint Board and the Complaint Office and Oversight in general. They've been very supportive. They have worked with us. They've been a great partner of ours and very supportive as we work to, again, improve oversight and accountability and relations with our community and this IMPD.
Thank you very much, President Ingram, and appreciate your insights into the behind the scenes and great work that the board does to address all of the complaints as they come in. And as I introduce Deputy Chief Kendall Adams, I also want, in full disclosure, to share with the community that much of what we hear about the Citizens Police Complaint process is that how can you all effectively hear complaints against the police when the office is monitored by the police? Well, again, we addressed that in 2017 by moving the office out of IMPD and into the mayor's office. So that's one factor of process change. But also, as President Ingram mentioned, Kendall Adams and IMPD have been very cooperative, very helpful in this process because, again, they also care about good policing and addressing complaints in a timely manner and in a manner that's going to be satisfied for all parties involved. So at this time, I want to ask Kendall Adams to present his report. I'm sorry, Councilor Robinson, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor. Just 2 quick things. President Ingram mentioned about the training. I want to thank you and Deputy Mayor and President Ingram and others who the news tried to make a big story out of that. I did an interview. I know Deputy Mayor did an interview on that, and I want to address the professional way you all address that. We all said, you know what, there may be an issue. Things bring it to our attention. We'll address it. So we weren't ducking and dodging, trying to hide that some of our board members hadn't been officially trained, but we addressed it head on within the professional manner. And as President Ingram just spoke to, we're going to address it fully going forward. And secondly, Deputy Mayor, regarding the IMPD investigation, which Deputy Chief will speak to, we do have a component in the new proposal where the office will hire an independent investigator. So that was a concern that came up, but in the proposal, we addressed it where the office will have their own independent investigator, not employed by IMPD, employed by their own office to address these complaints as well, working with internal affairs. So I just wanted to put that piece in there, and thank you for allowing me to speak again.
Thank you. Deputy Chief.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Hampton. This is a very fascinating conversation. Thank you for inviting IMPD. We join with Councilman Robinson and President Ingram in this effort to really be more transparent and really ensure that our community has legitimacy in the process. So let me address just a few things, because I think sometimes these things kind of get intertwined. Having been on the police department for 20 years, having been working in downtown for the last 10 years, I do have a little bit of perspective to provide. So first, it's important to note that the Citizens Complaint Office has never really been under IMPD. It has been a part of the public safety. It was its own agency, and now it's under the mayor's office, but it never has directly reported to IMPD. It's never directly reported to the chief of police. Those folks have never worked for us. However, we understand that because of our relationship with the Citizens Complaint Office, that is often a misconception. So that's one. The office has never been under IMPD or under the authority of IMPD. Two, I think it's important to note that the office receives about 50-ish, give or take a few numbers there, 50-ish complaints a year. And so for the vast majority of those, they were forwarded to IMPD Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs then evaluated those complaints based on the seriousness of that complaint, i.e., hey, if it's just a rudeness complaint, that may have gone to the district that Councilman Robinson spoke to earlier. If it was a more serious complaint, hey, this was a rudeness complaint, a use of force complaint, and maybe the officer stole some money, that stayed with Internal Affairs for them to then investigate. So I just want to make sure that people understand that process, because I don't want folks to think that, one, IMPD doesn't take these complaints seriously. We do. We on average, we're averaging about 100-ish complaints a year, and the vast majority, or really kind of split down the middle, are coming both from Citizen Complaint Office, but also from what we call field complaints. Somebody walks up to a supervisor, says, hey, I want to complain on the officer. We take those complaints very seriously. And so those complaints are investigated from the time that they're received. We talk to witnesses. We see if there's cameras in the area. This is obviously before the advent of body cameras. That's a whole nother conversation. But so we look at video in the area. We talk to the complainant. We talk to any witnesses in the area, and then that information is forwarded all the way up the chain of command. So it's not just a sergeant comes out to do an investigation and it stops there. It goes all the way to the to the commander, who will then make a determination, and then it comes to our office for a final review. So I want everyone to understand that we're looking at every complaint that comes through to make sure, one, that the supervisor's done their job, two, that they have the information there that needs to be evaluated. Sometimes the Citizens Complaint Board may say, hey, we need to see the computer-aided dispatch history for this particular call. We need to listen to the radio run. So our office makes sure that all of that information is forwarded to the Citizen Complaint, so that they have a full packet when they do their review. So that's and then additionally, we at one point in time prior to President Ingram's tenure, our investigators were coming to the meeting to ensure that they were answering questions that the board may have, addressing any allegations that may have popped up that the board didn't quite understand. So three, and then lastly, I'll kind of close with this. In terms of the training, that's important, right? I mean, when you're evaluating police officers on the job that they're doing, we want to make sure that those that are evaluating us have received the context that they need to make these kind of decisions. These are very significant decisions. When an officer is found to be in violation or be in compliance, there is a process called discipline, and so to have that on an officer's record could potentially impact that officer forever, not just that moment. It could impact that officer for future promotions. It could impact that officer for future positions. So, it is something that we take seriously, and it's something that the officers take seriously, just like anybody would at their job if they got a complaint. Now, police officers are in a much more fragile environment because, obviously people's perception, how they were handled, that can vary. I mean, sometimes there are very legitimate concerns about how they were talked to or how they were treated, and sometimes they're not, right? And so I'll end with this. With the advent of the cameras, which become a very important tool in this whole process, we'll be able to see, and that's a part of the investigative process, exactly what happened. Well, I shouldn't say exactly, because cameras aren't foolproof. They're not the panacea, as I tell people all the time. They're just one tool in the toolbox. This is what the actual camera looks like, and it actually goes in your uniform. So I worked on Thanksgiving Day, and I had this same uniform on. And as I went back and looked at some of that footage from some of those calls, I could see that my tie was getting in the way, right? So I'd say that to say that I don't want folks to think that this device is going to solve all the issues, but it does give us another perspective, hopefully an unbiased perspective that we can evaluate when a citizen or when a makes a complaint. And then I did say lastly, but one other thing, we back in 2017 we had also worked with the Citizens Complaint Board to deploy a public-facing dashboard, kind of what Councilman Robinson talked to in his ordinance. And so we worked with the Citizens Complaint Board at the time to deploy this dashboard. It wasn't as comprehensive as what has been suggested in the ordinance, but I say all that to say that we continually work with the Citizens Complaint Board because we know that process is important and we want to be a good steward for the process. So I hope that I've kind of given you just a snapshot of the process. The process, as we've kind of come to understand, the processes, all of our processes are really complicated. And I wish we could just write it all out and everybody understand it, but we really need to work more judiciously to make sure that people understand the process. What happens when they make a complaint? What are the time constraints? Because contractually, we have complaint, and when I say contractually, the contract we have with the city says that those complaints have to be done in 60 days, right? And so what that impacts the Citizen Complaint Office. They have to make sure that if they're going to have this independent investigator, that independent investigator can get all of those complaints done now in 60 days. So those are the kind of discussions that we need to have, and we need to make sure that everybody's at the table so that when we push forward these reforms, that they make sense. And then to Director Tribble and her report, fascinating. I think they speak to what we would agree. Mediation is a buzzword that I've been saying for the last couple of years. I think it's important. I think it really gives the citizen a voice. It gives the officer a voice. Dr. Hampton and I have sat in one of those. Very tense, right? Because you have the officer on one side who's saying, "Hey, this is why I did what I did," but then you have a citizen over here who's saying, "No, this is the way that made me feel." And I'm not sure that we left there agreeing, but I think we left there with both parties feeling like they had a voice, and that is important. And so I just wanted to highlight Director Tribble's work in that report, and we are in full agreement in the reforms that she has suggested in that report. So I'll stop there. I could go on, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief. And while I have you, at this time we want to allow for some Q&A from our listening audience, our viewing audience. A question that came in, I think you did address it, but how will the findings or the results from the complaint process inform or be utilized to modify police training or procedures? Can you just repeat that so the audience can be clear?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you'll see it in Director Tribble's report, but also it was already a part of the Citizens Complaint Office to do a yearly report for the Chief of Police based on the number of allegations that they receive. And so last year, or I'm sorry, the year before, we saw that report. That report was discussed with then Chief Roach, and we take some of that. For example, we took some of that information because the number one complaint at the time, or I think the number two complaint at the time, was racial bias policing. So we took that and then instituted our fair and impartial policing training that we did for all first line supervisors and all first line officers last year. So we sent all of our officers through that program based on the conversations that we had with the Citizens Complaint Office. So we'll continue, as Director Tribble has noted in her report, hopefully that will continue with the reforms that the Citizens Complaint Office has, because that's an important perspective to hear. The large portion of our complaints from last year came from rudeness, right? And so how does that inform the police department about what kind of training we're doing? And so we're always looking to get better and improve, and we share those results with our training academy so that they can implement training that's very parallel to the complaints that we're receiving.
Thank you. President Ingram, this may be for you, but just for the sake of the audience, someone asked if the meetings are publicized, and we do hold those on public television, but can you give the channel and the times that the board meets and it is public?
Great question. I saw that question come in. Dr. Hampton, our meetings are currently not publicized because of some of the information that we receive and that we discuss regarding an officer or a complainant, or some of the details of the complaint can be pretty graphic on some instances, and it may not. In the past, the decision has been that it might not be prudent to publicize that information before we had an opportunity to, discuss it. So the meetings are not public. However, what we have done in times past is host community conversations outside of the city county building, and we put a little bit of effort behind publicizing those and getting more community input around those meetings. We have talked about actually taking our monthly meetings away from the city county building to remove the barriers of going through security checks and things of that nature, just to make it easier for the community to have access to those meetings. However, what I will say is that in this COVID environment, we have begun to have discussions around how can we make these meetings public, maybe kind of cleansing some of the information and how we discuss the complaint in the details, such that sensitive information is not shared publicly. So we have to discuss that, and we will continue to figure out how in 2021 we can be more transparent. Also, there was a question around people filing complaints outside of the city, and currently anybody anybody can file a complaint, whether you're a resident or not. The ordinance just speaks to a complainant against an IMPD officer specific. So it's important to understand that we have other jurisdictions inside of Marion County that may not be, that are not under IMPD's jurisdiction, such as Lawrence PD or Southport PD, Beach Grove PD. Those cannot be filed by our office. Thank you. One of our board members just commented that our meetings are public. Thank you for that correction. Our meetings are public, but they're not on TV. So anybody can come to a meeting at the second Monday of every month, second or third Monday every month, 6 o'clock, but they're not on TV. So sorry.
Thank you, Dwayne. And just for public clarity, can you give the time and the location of the meetings in case anyone would like to attend the public meeting?
Thank you. Those meetings are on I always get the second or third Monday confused. It's the second Monday every month at 6 p.m. at the City County building on the first floor. So second Monday every month, 6 p.m. City County building. We're on the first floor, right by the elevator.
Thank you. And for anyone watching, for your information, many often ask, how do I even file a complaint? You can call the office at 317-327-3440. That's 317-327-3440, or send an email to cpco@indy.gov. Many people call into the Mayor's Action Center with police complaints. They are happy to take your call, but they're just going to route you to the Citizens Police Complaint Office. So we do ask for the public's knowledge. If you could call directly into the Police Complaint Office rather than having your complaint held up at the Mayor's Action Center, it will be heard and processed a lot quicker. Just want to make sure you all knew that information. Councilor Robinson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If you don't mind, if I can pose a question to President Ingram, with your permission. So President Ingram, could you please walk the community through the board appointment process regarding where those appointments come from, so at least they can know it is a public, transparent process where anyone can apply to be on the board, but just kind of speak to where those board appointments, the authority comes from to appoint the number of board members and that are present, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
There's three different bodies that make appointments to the complaint board. You have the mayor's office who makes appointments, the city county council who makes appointments, as well as the FOP. So if anyone would like to join the process and join our board, there is an application, I believe should be live on either our website or the council's website, and submit your resume, answer some questions, and then as board seats are made available, recommendations will come from those lists of names we have.
Dwayne, did you say the mayor, the council, and
the
basically
FOP.
police? Okay, the police department. Okay, got it.
Looks like we had another question. Dwayne, you may be able to. Are the board's training records or lack thereof available?
The training records are kept by the complaint office, and our board secretary keeps record of those. And whether or not they're made available, that's outside of my purview.
If I could just add to that, one of the recommendations around transparency will be to include that information on the dashboard to show the progress of board members in meeting those training requirements on an annual basis.
Yeah, and for public record, this conversation is important because it does help us with how to move forward with some best practices, and some of those suggestions will be taken into consideration. And if the mayor sees fit, we'll make those records public. For the sake of clarity, I've had this question before, because I have you all who are the experts here, you can help to clarify for the general public. Now we know that this board, the Civilian Merit Board, and the Use of Force Board are different, separate entities, but can we just explain those so the public can understand how they're different and who does what? So those of you watching, this is a Citizens Police Complaint Office and Board. We've explained what they do. We'll probably just talk about the Civilian Merit Board and the Use of Force Board. Deputy Chief?
Yeah, but Deputy Chief, I'll defer to Deputy Chief on that one. But also, Deputy Chief, we had talked about that flow chart a few months back. So I don't know if we're still going to engage the community on that, though. That's also maybe a piece that we can speak of, and how we're going to further engage folks about the different types of boards that we have and how the community get involved, and see how that process worked out. So thank you, Deputy Chief.
Yeah, appreciate it, Councilor Robinson. So yeah, I get this question often too. You know, the merit board, I'm just going to try to make it as simple as possible. Promotions, demotions, terminations, and hiring. That's that board. That's all they do for the police department. So basically, they're dealing with discipline, they're dealing with hiring, and they're dealing with promotions. So that's essentially all they do. Then you move down to the Use of Force Board, the new Use of Force Board, which will replace our Firearms Review Board. That deals with uses of force. So anytime an officer uses force, this new Use of Force Board will have authority to review all uses of force, right? Not just when an officer uses his weapon, but if an officer uses, a technique, a use of force technique that we document as a use of force, this board will have that authority to review that. So that's what that board reviews, just the use of force. And then you move down to the Citizens Complaint Board. This board primarily deals with complaints against officers. So if an officer, if a citizen feel like, hey, I was treated badly on this traffic stop, the Citizens Complaint Board would be the one you would route that complaint to, and they would review it. Now, how will they touch each other? That's a good question. For example, a Use of Force Board could potentially review a use of force case and say, hey, we think that, there's the use of force was within compliance to the departmental policies, but the way that, they treated this citizen, may not have been within policy. So they, could they refer that back down to the use of force board? That's a good question. Now, typically on the use of force board, those invest on through internal affairs as well. And so they would have, if there were allegations against an officer for, for example, rudeness, that would be contained in that use of force packet. So it may be an easier flow back down to the citizen complaint board. But some of these things, some is how they parallel each other. Mayor board probably not going to touch a lot. Maybe the force board, maybe a little bit. And then, obviously you have the citizen complaint board. So that's kind of describes the three, what I would call the three boards. Now, having said that, I think the goal of all three of these boards is to build legitimacy within our processes. Because at the end of the day, listen, I'm a police officer. I think we do a great job, but obviously what we've seen over the last couple of months shows us that we still have work to do. We still have bridges to build. We still have, communities that we need to touch, communities that we need to build relationships with. And so, we're a big police department, 1,700 plus, 400 square miles, 6 police districts. And every one of those police districts is a little different. So, I go back to Councilor Robinson and his meeting he had with those folks on the far east side. If you go to the far west side, you may get a different temperature. You may get a totally different feel. So it's important that commanders, the ones that run those districts, are building those relationships, and we have to continue to work. And I think that's what these boards are trying to do.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. And as Councilor Robinson noted earlier, the City Council, the Mayor's Office, and the Fraternal Order of Police have a certain amount of appointments or appointees that they can appoint to those boards apiece, and that's how they are assembled. And again, as we move toward these reforms toward the civilian board, same process, but including more civilians, so that again, the oversight is not just police and not just those who are part of the administration, but people like yourself watching us tonight who are part of the community. I see a question that came in regarding the Marion County Sheriff's Office and deputies and accountability. We really don't hold jurisdiction over the Sheriff's Office. That doesn't reside, it certainly doesn't with me in the Mayor's Office. So that would be a separate jurisdiction altogether, which I cannot speak to tonight, but thank you for the question.
Just real quick, Deputy Mayor, on that, they like us have an internal affairs as well that you can file a complaint with. And like Deputy Mayor said, they're separate from IMPD. I don't know that they have a citizen complaint board, but they do have an internal process. And you can speak with the sheriff about, whatever that issue may be.
Thank you. Councilor Robinson, can you, because I know that you, as the chair of the Public Safety Committee and hold a certain number of appointees, I think we're looking at one with President Ingram. Can you just talk about that process, at least from the council perspective, what goes into appointing and choosing individuals to serve on those boards?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and also thank you, President Ingram, for your role as a council appointment. You represented us well, which is why you've been reappointed by us. So thank you for your work and leadership on the board. Glad you asked that, Deputy Mayor. So just to look forward, we have the General Orders Board, which is a new board, which many of you may be familiar with. This recently passed the council, signed by the mayor, which gives the 4 civilian members a majority on the General Orders Board. So we have released a link on our webpage that any citizen in Marion County can put in an application to be appointed to that board. And those applications will be vetted with the council, with community leaders, and also with the council president. So any board appointment is open to anyone. And they have to go to online, they can put an application in online, or share a resume with a counselor, get it to our clerk, Ms. Sarita, at the council office, and tell what boards you want to be on. But you do have to fill out the online application online to start the process. And at the end of the day, President Osley makes those appointments. So they are council appointments though, but he has to sign up on those appointments. So we go through the vetting process where we will look at those board appointments, vet them through the council members, then through the chair. An example would be President Ingram comes through public safety, but Majority Leader Lewis has some through Metropolitan Economic Development. Council Chair Duke Oliver has them through Parks. So each chairperson has board appointments to come through the council for their particular areas of expertise. So anything dealing with public safety will come through my committee. Madam Leader Lewis, anything dealing with economic development and Metropolitan Economic Development will go through her committee. Chairman Oliver he's over Parks, the chair of Parks, any Parks Department boards will come through his committee. So we all have certain boards that come through our committee. We have numerous boards throughout the city, but the process is the same, where they have to fill out an online application first, and then application, we go through the vetting process of the council members and our staff to determine who's the best choice for that particular board. And then ultimately, President Osley makes the decision for the appointment, but that appointment then goes through the committee process. So Dwayne Ingram was, I think President Lewis and myself, President Ingram, recommended you for the board position. He comes for the committee publicly, he gives his speech, his words where he should be appointed. Then we vote. If it passed the committee, then it goes to the full council to vote, and they get to hear him out as well. And then once it passes the committee and the full council, then his appointment will be certified. So there's a process that's open to anyone in Marion County to be on the board for our city. And next up, of course, is the biggest one in my team, which is the General Orders Board, which is now the link is online, and those that are interested in that position, or those two positions by President Osley and the council, go online to our website, look at that link, and complete that application process there.
Thank you, Councilor Robinson. Is that link on the indy.gov website, or would that be on City Council?
It's on the City County Council website, but we'll be sure that by tomorrow morning it's on both websites. I'm not sure, but we'll have it done if it's not on the indy.gov website as well.
Thank you very much. And as we begin to conclude our conversation, thank you all so much for those who tuned in. We hope this was informative. We'd like to have more in the future, but this was the culmination of our continued review of the Citizens Police Complaint Office. And we're going to take all of your questions into account. And thank you to Hope Tribble and the Office of Audit and Performance for such a great review and report tonight. Councilor Robinson.
I do see a deputy, Madam Director. I do see a question in the chat. Does the Marion County Sheriff's Office budget come from the City Council? The answer is yes. The Marion County Sheriff's Office budget, Sheriff Forrester does a great job. His budget does become before our committee and the council, like the other offices. So the answer to that question is yes. And I don't know where that's leading though, but I think it may be leading to why not have a Citizens Police Complaint Board for the Sheriff's Department. If that's the case, we can also look at that the same way we have one with IMPD. Again, these are community conversations that we can have open to the public to provide additional transparency. If that's a thought that the person answering that question may have, please reach out to us so we can have that discussion.
Thank you again, and thank you all. The purpose of such a discussion is to inform, to educate, but also to empower you as citizens. Again, many individuals feel like they, for whatever reason, there's some trepidation in filing a police complaint. Again, the number to the office, if you have a police complaint, is 317-327-3440. Or if you don't want to go into the office or call in, you can submit a report online at cpco@indy.gov. And just for general knowledge, any questions you have regarding city government, any agency, any department, please visit indy.gov. Most of the answers to your questions can be found there. But if not, I'd be happy to answer a question. If you see me out in the community, Deputy Mayor Hampton, please feel free to stop me and ask a question. And any of our panelists I know will be happy to do the same. Hope you had another comment?
I did. I just wanted to just give the number of the board members just for, just to clarify or add a little bit more information. There are 12 members on the board. 9 are voting and 3 are non-voting. 3 of those members are, 3 voting members are appointed by the mayor. 6 voting members are appointed by the city county council. And then 1 ex officio is appointed by each, the mayor, the city county council, and the fraternal order of police. So that's the makeup of the board in the appointing authorities. Just wanted to share that for clarity.
Thank you for that, Hope. I have messed that up a few different times. I didn't even attempt, so thank you.
No worries. And I also want to, for the opportunity to be here tonight, and also to thank my team who did all the work on this and did a really good job in researching and getting the information that we need. So thanks, Barry Reinhardt and Mark Giblin, for your work on this.
Yeah. Councilor Robinson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. 2 more thank yous, Deputy Mayor. Executive Director Gina Bevan, want to thank her for her work over at the office there. We worked with her, again, for the last 6 to 8 months to bring these changes. She was very supportive and encouraging for these changes. I want to thank her. And also just want to reiterate, Deputy Mayor, from the opening statement I made, is that Proposal 197 came from community grassroots efforts. And President Osley and I, again, we have multiple community meetings with folks around the city regarding criminal justice reform and public safety. Again, we don't advertise them on social media. We don't do them on Facebook Live. We have these meetings with small groups of people, 15 to 20 people. And from those conversations, we create legislation. Again, we don't always promote it via social media though, but we have these conversations on a regular basis with the community and get input to create legislation. Proposal 197 is exactly that. As I mentioned earlier as well, Deputy Mayor, we have another proposal coming forward with funding that addresses the same issue with the discussion we had about 2 months ago, with community folks, grassroots folks asking, what can we do to stem the tide of violence in our community? And the idea was violence interrupters. So again, grassroots communities, we didn't come up with these ideas on our own. Folks showed us what the needs were, what the resources that were needed. And again, we created legislation and the resources, provide a resource to get these needs met from grassroots folks talking to us about the needs in the community. So again, not always on social media, not always live, but we're doing this work with feedback from those folks in the community doing the work. So I want to thank those that participated. And President Osley said that the meeting was at True Vine Church, is where the meeting was. I'm sorry for forgetting the name. President Osley did remind me it was a True Vine Church. This all started about 6 months ago. So thank you for the host of True Vine Church as well. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes who helped us to put this conversation on. Thank you again to the Indianapolis Recorder, and to those of you who viewed with us. Please know that your voices are being heard, even if it seems like the process is often slow. It is steady, and I do believe we're making progress here in the city. A lot of progress yet to be made, but a lot of progress is being made. So thank you all so much. God bless to everyone. Stay safe, and happy holidays to you. Thank you.